Hey guys, tonight, we're venturing into a world dimly lit by gas lamps, where the fog clings to corsets, and the air smells faintly of coal rosewater and something far stranger. You're gliding through the creaking streets of Victorian London, your boots tapping against slick cobblestones. Somewhere nearby, a carriage rattles past splashing mud laced with ash and the soot of 10,000 chimneys. You glance at your reflection in a fogged-up shop window. Your cheeks are flushed from the cold, but let's be honest, your pores are fighting a losing battle. You reach up to wipe away a streak of grime, and your fingertips brush something slick, almost gluey. What is that? You glance down. Oh, a garden snail leisurely making its way across a wrought iron railing, leaving a shimmering trail behind. You'd normally recoil, but in this story you pause and consider dabbing it on your face. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're a woman in the mid-1800s, and let's be frank, skincare is not what it will be in 100 years. There's no retinol, no sunscreen, and no gentle foaming cleansers. What you do have is a lead-based powder that makes your skin ghostly pale and slowly toxic. That, or you skip cosmetics entirely and accept the weathered look of someone who regularly breathes industrial smoke for breakfast. But here's the thing. There's a whisper floating through your tea circle down from the drawing rooms of the très chic and up from the apothecary's shelves. A new treatment. Something natural. Something moisturizing. Imagine that. And it's snail slime. You try not to gag, but the more you hear, the more curious you become. Apparently, it smooths the skin, calms inflammation, and if the gossip is to be believed, even reduces the ghostly pallor left by all that chalky powder you've been patting onto your cheeks. Now, to us, modern folk snail mucin might sound like an upscale K-beauty ingredient with glossy packaging and a $49.95 price tag. But here, under Queen Victoria's watchful eye, it's an unregulated concoction, ladled out by a man with yellow teeth and a questionable understanding of dermatology. Still, you're tempted, because let's face it, your beauty options aren't great. The average soap stings like betrayal, and that cold cream you bought last winter turned into something green and fuzzy by spring. And Victorian beauty culture isn't just a hobby, it's a high-stakes game of survival. Pale skin means privilege. A flushed cheek hints at manual labor, or worse, flirtation. Any wrinkle is considered a betrayal by your own face, so if a slow-moving mollusk might offer even a chance at reversing the march of time you're in. Picture this. Your friend Edith recently returned from Paris confides over crumpets that a woman at a Montmartre salon told her to crush snails and apply the goo directly. It tingles, she says, eyes wide, but in a good way. You nod solemnly and try to look scientific. So you set out to test this miracle for yourself. But how do you even collect snail slime? You're not exactly going to chase them with a pipette. Instead, you take the 19th century root place a few snails in a silk-lined box with mint leaves and let them slime their little hearts out. Then using a piece of muslin or a linen square, you delicately blot up the mucin and dab it onto your skin. Ta-da. Science. Well, sort of. Historians still argue whether women truly believed in its dermatological merits, or whether this was just the era's version of an Instagram challenge gone rogue. But the practice was documented in several beauty guides of the day. One even advised boiling the snails first, because you know that's definitely how you retain active compounds. Of course, there were skeptics. Your uncle, for example, mutters about ladies losing their minds when he catches you with a face that glistens suspiciously in the candlelight. Your younger brother calls you slug face. You throw your slipper at him. He deserves it. Still, you're not alone. Secretly, other women are doing the same thing. You start to recognize the signs, a peculiar sheen, a faint odor of garden mulch at the opera. And when the wind hits just right, the cheeks of Lady Wexley look suspiciously dewy. The wild part. It kind of works. Maybe not the wrinkle-erasing magic some pamphlets promise, but your skin does feel softer, plumper, less haunted by the horrors of London fog. And so you find yourself torn between revulsion and reverence, between snails and social acceptance, between the dry, cracked mask of chalky powder and the glistening possibility of natural rejuvenation, courtesy of something you once salted in your garden. You think briefly of what your grandmother would say. Then again she swore by rubbing brandy on her temples, and once accused a mirror of witchcraft. So you carry on, because in this era, the pursuit of beauty is a battle, and you've just discovered your newest weapon. It's slow, slimy, and surprisingly effective, and it's only the beginning. You wake the next morning to the sound of clattering hooves and the hiss of a coal cart outside. The air inside your bedroom smells faintly of lavender sachets and the musky residue of last night's experiment. You sit up, pat your cheek cautiously, smooth, not ethereal, not angelic, but definitely less paper-like. It's promising. Today, you'll head to your favorite apothecary, not the one with leeches in the window. No, the one with slightly better lighting, and a clerk who doesn't leer when you ask about facial applications. You're hoping to find something more official than a handful of snails in your nightstand drawer. But as you button your bodice, you hesitate, because you know what's waiting for you out there. Not just the soot, the social obligations, the unflattering daylight, but the other skincare options, the powders, the paints, the poisons. Face whitening is the name of the game. The paler you appear, the richer and more marriageable you seem. And how do you achieve that look lead? Straight up lead ground, and mixed with vinegar or rose water into a paste. Pat it on your cheeks, layer it until your skin shines like porcelain, and quietly accumulates heavy metal in your bloodstream. You've seen the consequences. Your cousin Helena's teeth fell out last spring, and everyone just blamed bad breeding. Her lips turned blue, and her hair thinned, and yet she was still complimented for her ethereal glow. You remember the irony well, since it came from a woman wearing arsenic rouge. Yes, arsenic. That delightful substance known for its role in family murders and eyebrow-raising novels also came in handy for making your cheeks look healthily flushed. Historians still argue whether its popularity stemmed more from fashion or from fatal denial. Of course, this all required skill. Apply too much, and you'd look embalmed. Too little, and you risked looking heaven forbid natural. The Victorian ideal of beauty wasn't just delicate, it was engineered. A carefully curated illusion held together with powders, potions, and hope. And if you weren't into chemicals, you might try the more natural options, chalk-crushed pearl or ground alabaster. Less deadly, but still harsh. Skin wasn't nourished, it was masked, bleached, punished, which is why when snail slime slithered onto the scene, It offered something radical moisture. The idea that your skin could be improved rather than disguised was as wild as women wearing bloomers. Most women didn't even understand how skin worked. It wasn't a living organ. It was a canvas for face paint, a battleground for vanity. But some women began to quietly rebel. You weren't the only one hiding your slimy linen cloth under your pillow. You start to notice small changes among your friends, a sheen of moisture instead of the usual chalky dust, an accidental confession over tea about a friend of a friend whose skin cleared up after a peculiar treatment involving slugs and steamed towels. One evening, you overhear a particularly juicy bit of gossip. A lady of the court, anonymous of course, is rumored to have stopped using white lid entirely. Instead, she smears her face nightly with a mysterious mixture purchased from a French herbalist, one that smells faintly of damp earth and garden leaves. You know exactly what that means. You even hear whispers of women rubbing raw potato slices into their skin, supposedly for whitening and smoothing. One particularly experimental girl tried mashed strawberries, and vinegar ended up looking like she'd lost a duel with a raspberry tart. Still, the point is, people are looking for alternatives. The deathly aesthetic of the era is being questioned if only by the bold and blemished. The shift is subtle, but you feel it an undercurrent of change. Snail slime may be gross, but it's alive. It comes from a creature that glides over broken glass and heals itself overnight. There's poetry in that, and maybe some biology, too. You're not immune to the irony. Snails, once tossed from gardens and crushed under boots, are now welcomed onto silk and skin. You wonder briefly what the snails think of all this. Then again, they're not known for their opinions. You tuck your linen away and glance in the mirror. The faint glow isn't just from the candlelight. It's something else, something new. You're no longer trying to erase your skin. You're trying to understand it. Still, it's not easy. You visit a shop claiming to sell snail essence balm. The jar smells of musty herbs and something vaguely medicinal. The label boasts of molluscan emollients. You're pretty sure that's not a real phrase, but it sounds expensive. You buy it anyway. Your friend Clara comes over that evening. She sniffs the jar skeptically. "You're paying for slugs now," she asks, raising one eyebrow high enough to suggest disbelief and envy. You simply smile and apply a thin layer. Her silence afterward is victory enough. Later, she asks to borrow it. You're part of something now, though you can't name it yet. A quiet rebellion against the ghost-faced tyranny of powdered masks and arsenic blush. You and your slippery little allies are changing the rules one gooey dab at a time. And as the gas lamps flicker and the fog rolls in again, you know one thing for certain. Anything that offers life to your skin in a world obsessed with death might just be worth the slime. You're in the garden now, early morning dew still clinging to the roses. You walk slowly, a basket over your arm, not because you're gathering flowers, though you might pinch a few petals for steeping later, but because you're hunting snails. Not metaphorically, literally. Tiny, glistening, squelching snails, making their slimy way up the brick walls of your courtyard, across leaves, and sometimes, if they're especially brazen, across the path, like they own it. You crouch down, pick one up gently by its shell. It recoils, of course, retreating into its spiral home, with an almost audible nope. You place it in your basket, alongside two others you scooped from the side of the watering can. Yes, this is how it starts Victorian skincare garden edition. The great paradox of womanhood in the 1800s. You're expected to be pristine, polished, dainty, and sometimes that means wrestling gastropods in the mud. You've learned the routine now. A cool, damp environment to keep them happy. Mint leaves a slice of cucumber, a light misting of water. Treat them right, and they'll slime freely. It's practically a business partnership. You just haven't told your family. Yet. Word is spreading. Not official announcements, heaven forbid such vulgarity, but quiet nods at garden parties. A sideways glance when someone says you're positively glowing. You even catch a snippet at the opera. Her skin. I heard it's French snails. There's a social divide beginning to form. The older ladies are skeptical, still loyal to their powder and pomade. But younger women, especially the slightly rebellious ones, are curious. Your friend Marion has started her own slug terrarium, which she hides behind her novels. A governess, applies mucin before her piano lessons. The footman pretended not to notice. You keep your own garden collection in a ventilated wooden box, lined with velvet scraps. It's all very civilized. You've named them naturally. Beatrix Maud Henrietta. You suspect Henrietta is the most prolific slime producer. You're not sure how one measures that exactly, but you feel it. Historians still argue whether snail slime skincare was an upper-class luxury or an underground oddity. Some diaries mention it casually. Others avoid the topic entirely, which might just be Victorian modesty or a silent agreement to never speak of creatures crawling across your face. But among your circle, it's becoming something of a quiet cult. You start keeping a journal of slime results. Day 3, less redness. Day 7, skin softer, less dry. Day 10 broke out on chin, maybe unrelated. Day 11 decided it was unrelated. Applied more slime. There's something oddly spiritual about it. You're no longer just slathering a cream from a shop shelf. You're tending, collecting, participating. It's part skincare, part ritual. And let's be honest, part rebellion. Because here's the unspoken truth, this isn't just about vanity. Not really. It's about agency. The freedom to choose what goes on your body. The freedom to say no, I don't want powdered poison, and instead opt for a gooey trail from a garden-dwelling, soft-bodied mollusk. At your next tea gathering, the conversation dances around eligible suitors and new bonnets. But your eye meets Edith's across the table. Her skin, like yours, has that faint glimmer. Not sweaty, not oily, just hydrated. You exchange the subtlest of nods. You're in on the secret. The newspapers haven't caught on yet. Neither have the doctors, really. Though you did hear about one in Bath who started prescribing a snail infusion for dryness. He stirs it with a silver spoon, apparently. Very classy. The apothecaries are more daring. Some have begun stocking what they call mucin tonics. The labels feature ornate fonts and vague promises for softness and clarity. One even includes a hand-drawn snail, coiled like a sleepy question mark. You ask the clerk, a young man with ink-stained fingers, what's actually in it. He glances around, lowers his voice and says, "Mostly glycerin. But there's a touch of snail. French, I think." You buy 2 bottles. Meanwhile, your mother remains blissfully unaware. She's too focused on preparing for your cousin's engagement ball. She asks you what you've been using to look less exhausted. You smile and say, "Oh, just a new botanical." She nods approvingly, never questioning your nocturnal snail rituals. Late one evening, you watch the rain fall against the parlor window, candlelight flickering. You take out your silk cloth, now dotted with glistening trails, from Beatrix and Company. You press it to your face, gently closing your eyes. In the hush of the moment, you reflect on how odd it all is. And how right. That in an era obsessed with death-like beauty, you found something alive. Something weird and wet and very much not approved by society's usual standards. It's not glamorous. It's not even pleasant. But it's yours. And as you lie back, the weight of the day melting away under the quiet magic of gastropod goo, you feel not just beautiful, but oddly powerful. The apothecary bell jingles as you step inside its soft chime, smothered by the thick, damp air of tinctures, dried herbs, and something vaguely reminiscent of pickled beets. You're here on a mission more serious than any bonnet fitting or corset adjustment you've come for the slime. Behind the worn oak counter stands Mr. Wickley, a man who has seen too many rashes and heard too many unsolicited footwart stories. He looks up, adjusts his glasses, and nods with recognition. "Back for more mucin solution, are we?" he asks with a smirk. You nod, because once you've committed to snail-based skincare, there's no turning back. But today, you're not settling for another half-ounce of pale goo in a paper-wrapped jar. You're investigating what else is being brewed in the backrooms of Victorian beauty. What's in the slime? Beyond slime. Wickley disappears through a beaded curtain, and you amuse yourself with the shelves. Liniments for gout, violet water for hair, a small bottle labeled Essence of Otter. You wisely avoid that one. He returns with a corked jar, greenish-gray, and gently quivering. Newest blend, he says. Enhanced. You narrow your eyes. Enhanced with what Wickley glances around, leans in. Crushed mint, lanolin, and the tiniest trace of alum tightens the pores you see. You're not sure if you're thrilled or terrified. You remember the last enhanced product he sold, rosewater, mixed with goose grease. That experiment ended with you smelling like a Valentine's roast. Still, curiosity wins. You purchase it. Historians still argue whether Victorian apothecaries truly believed in the medicinal powers of snail mucin, or if they simply recognized a growing market and ran with it. Probably both. There's something eternally profitable about promising hope in a jar, and the jars themselves. Tiny glass miracles, some lined with velvet, some sealed with wax. A few boasting inscriptions like dermal refinement compound or viscous night serum. These aren't mere salves, they're social declarations. You're not just a woman with skin, you're a woman with taste. Back home, you unwrap your purchase under the curious gaze of your maid Lillian. She doesn't ask questions, just raises a single eyebrow and exits the room. It's the eyes. You smear a fingertip of the goo across your cheek. It's cool, faintly minty, and yes, still slippery. But it no longer makes you flinch. It's oddly comforting. You think of all the things women put on their faces to chase beauty soot, for lashes, vinegar, for freckles, crushed bugs, for lip tint. In comparison, snail goo is practically clinical. Still, even among devotees, some rituals push the line between skincare and science fiction. You recall a letter from a cousin in Derbyshire. Apparently, there's a new technique where the snail is placed directly on the skin and allowed to roam. It works faster that way, she claims. Though I must admit, the sensation is animated. She enclosed a sketch. The snail looks smug. You've never tried it that way, but you're tempted. One morning, while everyone's at chapel, you give it a go. Henrietta, your trusty little trail maker, is released onto your jawline. Her progress is slow but deliberate. It's cold, slimy, slightly ticklish. You suppress a laugh and lie very, very still. The things we do for beauty. After 20 minutes and a near miss with your collarbone, you return her to her box. Your skin feels energized. Whether it's psychosomatic or truly restorative, you don't know. But something inside you believes in it. Still, not everyone is on board. There's pushback naturally. A letter to the Times warns of garden parasites making their way into the bloodstream. Another pamphlet suggests snail mucus may influence a lady's humors, though it doesn't clarify how. Doctors predictably remain cautious. No conclusive evidence says one. Possibly effective mumbles another. You wonder if they've even tried it. Meanwhile, the apothecaries grow bolder. Wickley now stocks an entire shelf labeled gastropod remedies. He's selling everything from snail lip balm soft, but smells suspiciously like turnips, to gastropomade, a hair tonic that claims to smooth flyaways and attract suitable husbands. You don't ask how. Even more bizarre, someone's peddling a snail-based tooth polish. You hope that's a joke, but the beauty manuals take it seriously. The household oracle for women now includes a short paragraph. Mucin of the garden snail is said to ease, soothe eruptions, and brighten a sallow countenance. It's official. Snails are in. And you're ahead of the trend. Every evening you sit by the mirror, dabbing your concoction across your cheeks with a soft cloth. You've added your own twist rosewater mixed in for scent, a drop of honey for thickness. You keep the recipe in your journal under the heading, Face Possibly Eternal. You're becoming something more than a consumer. You're a formulator, a skincare artisan in a world still arguing over whether women should be allowed to read medical books. And all because one rainy evening, you watched a snail shimmer across a brick wall and thought, maybe. It's absurd. And it's revolutionary. By now it's not just you. The trend is slithering outward, dripping slowly through drawing rooms, sneaking into salons, slipping beneath the hems of brocade gowns. It starts with murmurs in the society pages. Lady Rosamond's complexion stuns again. Her secret remains guarded. But then someone leaks it, as they always do. Suddenly a duchess is rumored to be using it. The duchess, the one with the alabaster skin and the gaze that could freeze a footman mid-step. She doesn't confirm it, of course. That would be gauche. But she also doesn't deny it, and that's enough. You spot it first in the quiet shift of tone. A columnist notes her remarkably hydrated skin with just enough emphasis to make you smirk. Then a fashion pamphlet makes a veiled reference to molluscan elegance. And one morning, as you sip your lukewarm tea, you see the proof and engraving of a lady dabbing something upon her cheek, and beside her unmistakably a snail in a velvet-lined saucer. You nearly spit your tea. What was once whispered between confidants is now becoming acceptable. Not exactly mainstream, but elevated. A curiosity among the bored rich, which in Victorian society is how most trends begin. Historians still argue whether the Duchess herself truly used it, or whether her staff did on her behalf. Some suggest it was her lady's maid, who discovered it, tested it, then suggested it quietly. Either way, her glowing cheeks appear in every drawing-room conversation from Kent to Kensington. And the copycats begin. You attend a garden party in early June. The air is warm, bees hover politely, and everyone's pretending they haven't noticed the asparagus canapes taste vaguely like chalk. But what you notice are the faces. Glossier, softer, dewier. Not powdery, not dry. You catch the look in their eyes when they pass the rose bushes, a flicker, as if wondering whether a snail might be nestled in the petals. You corner Lady Fortingale by the fountain and murmur, "It's the slime, isn't it?" She blushes furiously. You both laugh. You don't say another word about it, but she hands you a folded note before leaving. Inside, a recipe. Snail mucin elderflower. Extract a hint of rosemary. Apply nightly. No more than a teaspoon. It's spreading. Quietly, elegantly, with just enough absurdity to keep it interesting. A lady in Bath has started calling it her snail mask. Another swears by chilling the slime before application. Tightens the pores and startles the senses, she says, fanning herself. The strange part? You're proud. Not just that you were an early adopter, but that you stuck with it before it was fashionable. Before it had the Duchess's halo or Wickley's fancy jars. You did it when it was just you a candle and a creature named Henrietta. And now snails are becoming social currency. At a charity luncheon, a lady mentions she prefers native snails. None of this imported nonsense. You raise an eyebrow. The next woman counters, "Oh, I only use French mollusks. Those garden slugs are dreadfully provincial." You sip your tea and try not to snort. It's begun snail one-upmanship. You're not even surprised when a salon opens in Bloomsbury, advertising live gastropod facials. The brochure shows a reclining woman with her eyes closed, 3 large snails perched artistically on her brow and cheeks. You squint. One of them looks suspiciously like Beatrix. Some women adore it. Others are horrified. One paper prints a cartoon showing a noblewoman being slimed mid-concert shrieking, while her snail plops dramatically into her teacup. It's hilarious. And somehow, it makes the whole practice even more appealing. There's something delicious about being part of a movement so strange, it must be mocked. You start carrying a tiny jar in your reticule. Just a dab for emergencies. Dry cheek at the theater. No problem. Unexpected guest, and you need to glow handbag gastropod goo to the rescue. It's your secret weapon. And it works. People notice. Not just women. Men start commenting clumsily, of course. One says you look quite polished. Another offers. Your face appears unusually intact. A third bolder fellow declares, you don't seem as dusty as the others. You accept these compliments with grace, and only a small internal wince. Then the moment you never thought would happen, your mother asks, "Darling, what are you using these days? Your skin has the softness of a peony petal." You pause, consider, smile. Just a new botanical preparation. Mother, quite gentle. You do not mention the snails. Not yet. One miracle at a time. But the Duchess has broken the dam. You hear rumors of an actual brand forming the Mucin Society. Their motto, grace and glisten. You hope they're joking. But also you'd probably join. And as you lie in bed that night, massaging the latest iteration of your slime serum blend into your skin, you can't help but feel it validation. You're no longer eccentric. You're cutting edge. Victorian beauty, for once, isn't just about hiding. It's about experimenting, slipping past convention like a garden snail on a moonlit stone wall. Slow, deliberate, and strangely dazzling. Tonight, you're not attending a ball. You're not curling your hair or fastening a brooch that weighs as much as a goose egg. No, tonight is something far more indulgent, your very own snail spa ritual. And no one, not even Aunt Beatrice with her ever-judging monocle, can interrupt it. The house is quiet. The servants have retired. The gaslight flickers low, casting golden halos across the wallpaper. You've drawn the curtains and arranged everything on your vanity with the precision of a chemist/bonkers alchemist. Linen cloths. Check. Steaming kettle bubbling away. Rose-scented basin prepared. And in the center of it all, nestled on a porcelain dish, 3 very cooperative snails. Henrietta, of course. Beatrix, and the new recruit Wilbur, who may or may not be just slightly larger than necessary. You begin with a cucumber compress, thin slices chilled arranged lovingly over your eyes. This part is more performative than practical, but tradition is tradition. Next, you lean over the basin, letting the floral steam rise up and kiss your face. Pores theoretically open like Victorian fans. You breathe in. You exhale. You're ready. With great ceremony, you take one Snail Henrietta the Star and gently place her on your forehead. She hesitates, antennae quivering, then begins her slow descent, leaving a shimmering trail of hydration. It feels cool, tingly, marginally invasive, like being judged by a very damp librarian, but also inexplicably luxurious. This dear listener is the height of at-home elegance, in a time when most beauty regimens involved raw egg yolks, coal dust, or disturbingly urine rinses. Yes, really. Historians still argue whether the ammonia content made it worthwhile, or just profoundly unfortunate. You recline, allowing the gastropod trio to work their magic. Beatrix seems partial to your left cheek. Wilbur keeps trying to detour toward your ear. You adjust gently, whispering sweet nothings like "No, Wilbur." We talked about boundaries. You've become fluent in this strange form of self-care. It's oddly meditative. You're not layering on toxins. You're not burning your skin with acidic lemon tonics or baking soda exfoliants so rough they could sand a banister. No, you're using something alive and weird and wonderful. The Victorians had a complicated relationship with nature. On one hand, they adored taxonomy and gardens. On the other, they industrialized everything to death and lined their curtains with arsenic green dye. So it's no surprise that this moment, this absurd communion between woman and snail, feels both revolutionary and oddly fitting. You gently lift the snails after 20 minutes. They return to their luxury box, with slices of melon as thanks. Then, you take your linen cloth and gently press the trail into your skin, not wiping it away, no, but pressing it in. That's key. Afterward, your cheeks gleam like polished porcelain. You look in the mirror and almost giggle. You've reached a point in your life where you can say, "I let 3 mollusks crawl on my face tonight," and not feel even a little embarrassed. You jot a note in your skincare journal, "Wilbur prefers temple region." Beatrix consistent. Henrietta, she asks, gold standard. You underline it twice. Outside, the fog is thick. A carriage rattles by unseen. Somewhere in the city, someone is powdering arsenic onto her cheeks and wondering why her eyelashes keep falling out. Meanwhile, you're glowing with mucus, and you've never felt more cutting edge. This movement is no longer a novelty. The recipes are evolving. A woman you know has started adding ground lavender to her slime. Another stirs in a whisper of beeswax to thicken the texture. You even hear rumors of snail serums being traded under the table at piano recitals. But there are skeptics, of course. Your cousin Penelope sniffed derisively at your glowing complexion and said, "You smell like the garden path." To which you replied, "Better than a chalk pit, darling." She has yet to recover. Still, there's a learning curve. Too much mucin, and you risk looking like a glazed ham. Too little, and your skin dries before it absorbs the benefits. You found that layering works best. Warm towel thin layer of slime, press pause, and repeat. Think of it as a symphony snails, as instruments your skin, as the stage you, as the slightly unhinged conductor. There's even a bit of community now. Notes are exchanged, recipes shared. Snail night becomes a secret phrase among the initiated. You imagine someday there will be clubs, secret societies, possibly jackets with embroidered spirals, and as you settle into bed, face aglow linen pillowcase, cool against your cheek, you feel something new peace. Not just from the softness of your skin or the quiet hum of the night, but from the knowledge that you've created this ritual for yourself. Not for men, not for magazines, just for you. A final thought drifts through your mind before sleep takes you. Would a tiny bonnet make Henrietta look more distinguished? You decide to sketch it tomorrow. You're back in the apothecary, but this time, not as a shy shopper. Today, you're here to ask questions, the kind that get you either a knowing wink or an oh dear one of those ladies sort of look. Mr. Wickley peers up from behind the counter, elbow deep in a jar of dried chamomile. "Back for your slippery tincture, miss?" he asks, amused. You nod, but lean in conspiratorially. What is it that makes it work, do you think? What's in the slime? He blinks. Mucopolysaccharides, he says slowly as if unspooling a foreign incantation. Natural glycolic acid trace peptides. It's healing. Some say regenerative. Mostly water. But there's something special. You blink back. You hadn't expected him to answer like a chemist in a frock coat. The thing is, you've started noticing your skin behaving differently. Softer, yes, but also calmer. Your cheeks no longer flare up with wind chill like they used to. That odd little bump near your temple smoother now. And while you're no physician, you are beginning to suspect something deeper is going on. Victorians, after all, love a good theory, especially the half-baked kind. And now science, or at least the whisper of it, is starting to swirl around your beloved gastropod goo. You've heard of Dr. Wintercombe Eccentric Fellow, notorious for cataloging 173 types of moss. Apparently, he's become interested in snail secretions and their effect on human skin. Tissue renewal, he mutters in lectures. Moisture retention. Wound healing. You heard he even experimented on himself, cut his hand-applied mucin, and claimed it healed twice as fast. Though historians still argue whether he also sprinkled it with crushed thyme, skewing the results entirely. Still, the idea takes hold. Suddenly, there are more apothecaries selling purified snail distillate. Bottles begin listing ingredients. Not just vague phrases like essence or balm, but actual words that sound vaguely Latin helix aspersa. Extract natural collagen stimulant. You don't know what half of them mean, but they sound expensive, and that's what matters. You buy a bottle. It smells clinical, less earthy than your homemade blend, but somehow reassuring. You imagine a tiny laboratory behind the counter, snails in neatly labeled terrariums, clerks, in white gloves bottling the future. You start noticing the difference between slime types. Wild snails produce thicker mucin. Garden snails gentler, more hydrating. One woman claims the smaller the snail, the more potent the secretion. Another insists that feeding snails rose petals changes the fragrance. "My face smells like June," she exclaims, borderline hysterical. The science is fuzzy, of course. This isn't Cambridge. It's cobbled streets and candlelit kitchens. But still, there's a shift happening. People want explanations. They want reason behind their rituals. Even your mother raises an eyebrow when you mutter something about elasticity proteins. "Are you reading medical journals now?" she asks. "No," you reply. "Just listening to my skin." You're not the only one. The beauty manuals are getting bolder. A new pamphlet appears in the lending library. Skin and Slime, A Woman's Guide to Dermal Vitality. Chapter 3 is entirely devoted to natural gastropod elixirs, and even features a hand-drawn diagram of a snail sliding across a woman's collarbone. It's both educational and deeply unsettling. You also read about a German physician who supposedly injected mucin into the skin with a needle. You put that one firmly in the maybe not pile. Some experimentation goes too far. But you're fascinated by the biology. Snails heal fast. They glide across rocks and glass, and somehow never get hurt. Their mucin is full of stuff that repairs seals, soothes. Nature's little repair kit wrapped in a shell. What's not to love you? Begin treating your skin like a botanical specimen. Observing, testing, noting what makes it glow and what makes it rebel. You try a blend of mucin with crushed chamomile. Success. You try adding clove oil. Mistake. You smell like a holiday ham and break out in hives. Live and learn. You share findings with your slime circle, a group of like-minded women who now meet every other Thursday under the guise of book club. In truth, no one reads the assigned novel. You mostly discuss mucin pH levels and whether it's better to refrigerate your jars. It is. One evening, Clara stands and reads a passage aloud from a scientific journal she borrowed from her brother. Mucus, secretions from the Helix genus, have been shown to contain allantoin hyaluronic acid and antimicrobial peptides, all of which assist in cellular turnover and skin hydration. Everyone stares at her. "Does that mean we were right all along?" someone asks. She nods. "I think it means we're geniuses." There's laughter, of course. Someone proposes creating a branded line. Someone else jokes about writing to Queen Victoria with a sample. You wonder if she'd be amused or horrified. But in the quiet moments afterward, as you walk home beneath the gas lamps, you realize how far you've come. From hesitant dabblings with garden snails to actual conversations about peptide chains. It may be pseudoscience, it may be placebo, but you don't care. Because your skin feels good. You feel good. And in a world that still considers female skin to be either ornamental or scandalous, that alone feels like progress. You're sitting on the edge of a velvet chaise in your drawing room, leafing through a slim green book titled Cures, Creams, and Curiosities. The pages are brittle, the ink smudged in places, but the content is gold. Right between Hog's lard tonic for thinning hair and dried bat powder for liver spots lies a short, mysterious entry snail mucin for the restoration of youthful glow and the banishment of unclean spirits. You blink. Spirits. The Victorians, as it turns out, had a complicated relationship with both beauty and the supernatural. If it wasn't blessed by a priest warned against by a midwife, or suspiciously associated with witches, it didn't count as a proper home remedy. Snail slime, for all its natural virtues, soon found itself on both sides of that cultural chasm. You've started noticing just how quickly your beloved mollusk goo is picking up baggage. One woman in your social circle swears it keeps bad energies from settling in her skin. Another claims it's a deterrent against nightmares. The snails protect the dream passageways, she says, sipping her tea with the serene confidence of someone who's definitely read too much Byron. Historians still argue whether the spiritual associations came from old folklore or were simply tacked on by overzealous women trying to justify their nightly slime rituals to suspicious husbands. Either way, it's spreading. You visit an herbalist who insists the snail must be introduced to the skin with intention. He sells you a blessing sachet to bury in your pillowcase. It smells like mildew and regret, but you keep it anyway, mostly for the story. There's even an emerging belief that slime prevents facial curses, the Victorian term for chronic adult acne. Witch marks, some call them. You roll your eyes, but take notes anyway. At a dinner party, Lady Pemberton confides in you under cover of a fig tart. My cousin's face erupted in boils after using a fake slime tonic. It was cursed, I'm sure of it. You try not to laugh, but she's dead serious. Meanwhile, back in your bathroom, or what passes for a bathroom, in a house where bathing involves a copper tub and 2 hours of logistics, you're refining your routine. You've started layering. A gentle rose water rinse, then a dab of mucin concentrate across the cheeks and forehead. Let it sit. Then the magic step, a thin cloth soaked in chamomile tea, placed delicately across your face, like a warm ghost hug. You lie there silent, imagining the molecules doing their work. Smoothing. Healing. Possibly casting out demons. You hum a lullaby to Henrietta and Beatrix in their enclosure, just in case intention really does matter. Of course, for every practical enthusiast, there's a charlatan. You hear rumors of a woman in Whitechapel selling holy snail oil that's just water goose fat and glitter. Another advertises gilded gastropod, drops 5 shillings for a bottle the size of a thimble. She claims it's aged mucin. You suspect it's expired cod liver oil. Even Wickley's getting skeptical. Everyone wants in now, he mutters, placing a new batch of snail creams on the shelf. Had a lady in here yesterday asking for one that would make her cheekbones sing. What does that even mean? You shrug. Elevated facial resonance. He groans. Still, you keep experimenting. Not because you think you're under a curse, but because it works. Your skin is clearer, smoother, and it's not just in your head. You've had fewer flare-ups. Your cheeks feel less like parchment. Your forehead practically dewy. Even your housemaid noticed. You look younger, miss, she said yesterday, straightening your pillows. Bit shiny, but not in a bad way. You thanked her and slipped her a lemon tart. The witchcraft rumors, however, continue. A letter circulates claiming snail slime was used in pagan rituals to awaken skin vitality. Another pamphlet warns against dabbling in mollusk-based seductions. You wonder if they're talking about skin care or something more scandalous. There's even a preacher who rails against it from the pulpit. Ladies, beware the crawling cure. It is neither of the earth nor the Lord. You're not sure how to respond to that, other than by applying extra mucin that very night, just out of spite. But for every critic, there are 5 more converts. Your friend Lucinda writes from Sussex. My skin is smooth. My dreams are pleasant. And my husband has stopped calling me papery. Long live the snails. You toast her with your chamomile and smile. At the next social gathering, things get truly wild. You overhear someone discussing slime moon cycles, the belief that snail mucin is more potent when harvested during a waxing gibbous. Another swears by keeping the snails in rose quartz-lined containers. The energy you see, she says, as though that clears up everything. You quietly slide a note to Clara. We've gone full goblin mode. She nods solemnly and bites into a biscuit. But under the madness, the heart of it still beats women, experimenting, sharing, caring for their skin in ways that defy both fashion and superstition, whether they code it in pseudoscience Victorian folklore or slightly melted beeswax. They're doing something sacred, choosing softness over suffering. And you're fine with the mystery. Maybe it is part magic, or maybe it's just hyaluronic acid in a sticky little trail. Either way, your skin doesn't care. It glows. You're walking along a country lane now, skirts lifted just above the mud, a bonnet shielding your face from the late afternoon sun. You've come to visit something peculiar, what your friend Clara whispered about last week between sips of lemon cordial. They've built a snail farm, she said, eyes gleaming. A real one, pens and everything, in Yorkshire. You assumed it was a joke, or maybe the result of too many sherries. But here you are standing before a wooden gate with a modest sign that reads, Eden Gastropodry, for the finest slime in the empire. The farm is surprisingly organized. Long wooden troughs stretch across a patch of shaded garden. Inside, hundreds of snails inch along branches, leaves, and specially prepared surfaces. Some are nestled in cabbage heads, others clinging to the damp sides of brick partitions. You take a deep breath. It smells like mint loam and just a hint of, well, snail. Earthy. Not unpleasant. Certainly better than the fish-based lotions you once tried from a peddler in Brighton. A young man approaches pale, bespectacled hair, too tidy to trust completely. First time visiting, he asks. You nod. Welcome to the future, he grins. He shows you around, explains their process morning misting to keep the snails hydrated lavender bedding for scent, a specially brewed cucumber mash for diet. Happy snails make better slime, he says with total sincerity. You try not to giggle. They harvest the mucin by having the snails glide across fine mesh. No harm done, he assures you. Quite relaxing for them, actually. Historians still argue whether this was the real method or just a sanitized explanation for urban clients. Either way, it's elegant in theory. They collect the trails, mix them with distilled rosewater and a whisper of citrus oil, then pour the concoction into small glass vials, each corked, wax-sealed, and labeled by hand. It's brilliant, and absurd, and beautiful. You purchase 2 vials, one for yourself, and one for Clara, who will squeal with delight when she sees it. You picture her holding it up to the light like a gemstone. The snail market is booming. It turns out women aren't just using snail mucin, they're profiting from it. A lady in Cornwall has turned her garden into a snail sanctuary, selling slime to apothecaries and perfumeries. Another in Scotland offers custom-infused mucin blends, where you can pick your herbs and flower additives. Snail slime bespoke. Of course, with popularity comes imitation. At the train station, a man hawks snail elixir for radiant skin and stronger morals. The label features a smiling mollusk wearing a monocle. You suspect there's no mucin in it at all, possibly just glycerin and wishful thinking. Some salesmen are sneakier. Snail-based soap that contains no actual slime. Snail-fed cream, whatever that means. Even snail-vitalized vinegar, which is at best baffling. You hear of one enterprising boy who paints snails gold and sells them as sacred skincare totems. He's made a fortune from 3 gullible aunts and a passing French tourist. Still, the genuine stuff finds its way to the right hands. Word of mouth, sisterhood, code phrases like that lovely luminous touch or the velvet glow. You know them when you hear them. There's a strange thrill in it all, seeing a thing so humble, so slimy, become a symbol of beauty, of autonomy. Women choosing something strange over something sanctioned. Not the powdered death masks, not the mercury lip balms, not the acid peels that make your face burn like a sunbeam's revenge. No. Snails. Slow, silent, gentle. With a skincare resume longer than most debutantes' suitor lists, you begin thinking about the economics. Could you perhaps sell your own? You already have the snails, the routine, the recipes. You sketch a logo in your journal that night, a snail curled into a spiral surrounded by ivy. Underneath the words, "Soothed by nature." You laugh at yourself, but only a little. Because why not Clara writes back 2 days later. She's tried the farm-bought vial. It's silk in a bottle, she declares. I used it on my elbow for fun, and now it's smoother than my cousin Alfred's pickup lines. You send her another. You begin hearing stories of other farms cropping up. One in the Lake District uses wild thyme. Another in Devon specializes in night mucin harvested only after sundown. People are calling it a movement, a viscous revolution. You'd roll your eyes, but your forehead's too relaxed now to manage it. There's something comforting about the slowness of it all. In a world obsessed with fast results, quick marriages, and even quicker judgment, the snail takes its time. And in doing so, it teaches you something. Your skincare isn't hurried anymore. It's deliberate, slow strokes, gentle applications, thoughtful ingredients. A practice, not a panic. A ritual, not a regimen. And now the world seems to be catching on. You wonder what the future holds. Bottled blends, apothecary partnerships, gastropod-themed tea sets. You tuck the idea away. For now, it's enough that your skin is soft, your heart is light, and your snails are thriving. You're sitting at your vanity again, a silver hand mirror in one hand, and a clean linen cloth in the other. But this evening, the ritual feels different. Not because of the slime or the routine, you've mastered that, but because of what you heard earlier at tea. A doctor, a real one, with spectacles, and a title, and a lecture circuit. Apparently, he's published a small warning in the Gazette for Ladies' Health. The headline, "Gastropods and Germs, the Hidden Dangers of Slime-Based Skincare." You nearly choked on your biscuit. He claims that without sterilization, snail mucin might introduce pathogens of a dubious nature into the dermis. Dermis. You're still not over how official that word sounds. The article's tone teeters between concern and outright panic, accusing snail farmers of poor hygiene, women of reckless vanity, and the whole movement of being a danger to Victorian womanhood. You raise one brow, the one that's significantly more moisturized than the other. Dubious pathogens sounds more like something you'd find in a gentleman's club, not Henrietta's cozy enclosure. But still, the article rattles around in your mind like a loose bead in a sewing tin. That night, you disinfect your linen cloths twice. You boil a spoon you use for mixing your serum. You even briefly consider putting little shoes on your snails. It's not just the doctor. Other murmurs are cropping up too. The Ladies' Temperance Circular printed a cartoon of a woman completely covered in snails, her husband fainting nearby. Beneath it, the caption, "Is this beauty?" You'd be offended if it weren't so hilarious. Still, some of the warnings hit closer to home. A friend mentions getting a rash after trying a new mucin elixir sold out of a market stall. You ask what else was in it. "I don't know," she says, "but it smelled like vinegar and something fishy." You wince. Turns out not everyone is as careful as you, and the consequences are bubbling up. One woman in your sewing group shows up with a red, blotchy chin. Another complains of skin fatigue, which may just be Victorian for too many experiments. Historians still argue whether these early side effects were caused by the slime itself, or by poor hygiene additives, or just plain overuse. Like most things in the 1800s, there were no standard labels, no ingredient disclosures, and certainly no patch testing. You begin inspecting your routine with a fresh eye. Is your mucin really as clean as you thought? Is your snail enclosure hygienic enough? Should Henrietta and Beatrix be moved to a better ventilated location? You clean it. Twice. You start using boiled water for your blends. You line your preparation tray with sterilized gauze. And you develop a new motto. Snails are clean, but humans aren't. Your maid Lillian walks in during one of your most fastidious sessions and freezes. You're wearing cotton gloves, holding a jar labeled mucin, filtered and talking to Wilbur like he's a laboratory subject. Do you want me to alert the asylum, miss? She asks dryly. You smile. No need. The results are excellent, despite the backlash the slime loyalists remain. The circle holds strong. You've even added a few new members women who've been burned literally by arsenic creams and are seeking salvation. They're nervous, skeptical, but curious. You guide them gently. Always keep your snails healthy, you say. Feed them fresh herbs. Use clean tools. And never buy anything labeled Snail Miracle Tonic from a man with a waxed mustache. They listen, mostly. At your next book club meeting, which by now no one even pretends is about books, one woman brings a new theory. Snails cleanse more than skin, she says, voice hushed. They remove impurities of the spirit. You nod diplomatically. Whether it's toxins or trauma, you suppose the slime works the same. Still, a strange paradox emerges. The more popular the mucin becomes, the more suspicion it invites. It's now too trendy, which means it's vulnerable to mockery moralizing, and worst of all, regulation. You hear rumors of an official inquiry, something about foreign animal extracts, and preserving the sanctity of British complexions. You snort so hard, you nearly upend your chamomile tea. But you prepare anyway. You label your jars more clearly. You create a separate blend, just for travel, using only what you can personally verify. And you begin drafting just in your head. For now, a short guide, Safe Snailing, a Gentlewoman's Approach to Mucin Management. Chapter titles include Boiling Water, Not Temperament, and Identifying Questionable Gastropods. Because despite the noise, the snails remain. They are your silent allies in a world that insists on shouting what a woman should look like, feel like, be like. And unlike powdered lid, they've never betrayed you. That night, as you press the cool slime into your cheekbones, you whisper softly, clean, calm, collected. It becomes a mantra, a promise, a way forward. Let the critics cry contamination. You have cucumber-scented clarity. The magazine illustration is ridiculous. A woman in a ball gown lying supine on a velvet chaise, with snails crawling across her face, like she's the main course at a Parisian escargot banquet. The caption reads, Society's slimy secret has beauty, gone too far. You roll your eyes and fold the page shut. It's satire. Mockery dressed in inky curls and smirking punchlines. But underneath the humor, there's panic, old-fashioned, well-coiffed social panic. Because what began as quiet experimentation is now a full-blown craze. And the high society papers don't know what to do with it. One column describes mucin as the slippery slope of modern womanhood. Another calls it the decline of dignity gastropod first. You laugh, then reapply your serum, letting the cool glide of the slime remind you who's really winning. But you can't deny it, snail mucin has become sensationalized. What once felt like a secret, shared between curious women, now headlines, every gossip rag and back-page medical column. Some love it, some loathe it. Everyone's talking about it. You find yourself in the middle of it all. On one hand, you're delighted. Your little jars, once hidden in drawers, and slipped out only under cover of moonlight, are now discussed over clotted cream and scones. Clara says she heard a duchess compare mucin brands at the opera. She prefers the Devonshire blend. Clara whispers, says it's less sticky in humid air. On the other hand, you're irritated. You see knockoffs everywhere. Blends that smell of boiled cabbage, jars boasting instant miracles, and 10 years younger in a night. One brand promises facial transcendence, another spiritual invincibility. That one costs 3 guineas and comes with a tiny gold spoon. Historians still argue whether these outlandish claims were believed or simply enjoyed, consumed like theater with a wink and a healthy skepticism. But some women fall for it. You meet one who's been layering 5 different Snail products every day. Her skin is blotchy, confused, but the instructions said to triple coat before sunrise. She insists eyes wide with panic. The movement is losing its softness, the stillness that once defined it, the slow ritual, the calming hum of a single snail's glide, is being replaced with hysteria. Everyone's racing to be first best, most glazed. You try not to get swept away. Your own routine remains unchanged. You still harvest gently, still mix with rose water, still press the cloth against your cheek and breathe deeply. You remind yourself this isn't a trend. This is care, connection, a rebellion against the brittle expectations of powdered perfection. But society is frothing. New caricatures appear weekly. One depicts a grand ball, where all the women have snails instead of earrings. Another shows Queen Victoria herself, with a slug crown, tasteless, vaguely amusing, entirely missing the point. And now, the men are chiming in. One writes, in the Gentleman's Mirror, "If my wife begins to glow with mollusk sheen, I shall seek solace in whiskey and wigs." Another suggests that snail-slathered spouses are the reason for England's declining fertility rate. You're not sure how that math works, but you suspect it's nonsense. Still, you feel the shift. At parties, people ask if you still do the snail thing, as if it were a passing hobby, like learning the harpsichord or dabbling in watercolors. You nod, smile, and say, yes, it's not a thing. It's a practice. That usually shuts them up. But not everyone's so composed. You hear of women tearing pages out of beauty magazines in fits of jealousy, of friendships strained because someone wouldn't share her serum recipe. One lady was rumored to have locked her snails in a cabinet after her sister over-harvested. You wonder what that even looks like. Somewhere along the way, the movement stopped being about skin. It became a status symbol. Imported mucin from France. Limited edition jars. Signature scents. You even hear of a snail-infused perfume, which is either ingenious or appalling, depending on your tolerance for earthy top notes. At your next book club, not a single book in sight as usual. The tone is tense. Clara looks annoyed. I saw Lady Grayson brag about using 3 different types of snails. One for the morning, one for the evening one, for divine alignment. She makes air quotes so aggressively her scone crumbles. Lucinda nods. I miss when it was just us, and a few silk cloths. You all fall into a nostalgic silence, broken only by the clink of teaspoons, and the distant hum of Wilbur still your most consistent mucin provider, gliding peacefully in his little terrarium. You decide to act. You write an anonymous letter to the Ladies' Domestic Review. It's short-pointed and soothingly sarcastic. The title Snails Are Not a Spectacle, a gentle reminder. In it, you advocate for simplicity, for mindfulness, for not treating mucin like a racehorse or a parlor trick. You close with a line that makes Clara spit her tea. Skincare is not competitive sport. Let the snails be slow, and let your skin follow. The letter is printed 2 weeks later. Some applaud, some scoff. One woman writes in to say it changed her life. Another demands your identity so she can challenge you to a duel. You decline, but the storm softens, just a little. Women begin sharing quieter routines again, small batch blends, muted rituals. The noise dies down, and in its place the gentle glide of something true. You stand at your mirror jar in hand and smile at your reflection, not because you look perfect, but because you look peaceful, and that in the end was always the point. The ship rocks gently in the harbor flags, fluttering as dock hands load crates onto the gangplank. You're standing on the wharf lace gloves, shielding your hands from the thick salt air, watching the bustle of cargo bound for Calcutta, and nestled among the tea chests, the ivory carvings and the perfumes you spot them. Small, neatly wrapped boxes stamped with delicate gold letters, Helix Beauté, refined Musin London origin. Your jaw tightens slightly. It's happened. The snails have gone colonial. It began subtly, of course. A lady traveling to the West Indies sent back a letter. The climate here does not agree with my usual creams, but your snail salve is a marvel. Another from Cape Town tell Beatrix she's doing the Lord's work. You laughed then. But now the export trade is real. Snail mucin has joined the likes of silks, spices, and soaps. A curious commodity in the great imperial march. The British Empire, never one to let a trend stay domestic, is slathering snail essence across oceans. A merchant in Bombay now offers gastropod cream gentle for the tropics. A woman in Jamaica writes into the Ladies' Gazette to request advice on storing slime in the heat. One apothecary advertises sun-hardy snail blend with added lime peel. The empire absorbs everything, including skincare. You're unsure how to feel. On the one hand, there's pride. You were there from the start. You remember the first shimmer of mucin on your cheek, the early ridicule, the private rituals, and now it's global. You imagine Henrietta's tiny face if she had expressions quietly smug. But on the other hand, this isn't what you wanted. The simplicity is gone. Mucin has become just another export bottled, branded, and barged halfway across the world, alongside opium and missionary tracts. There are advertisements in the Indian Herald for British Glow in a jar. One shop calls itself the Empire of Elegance. Another simply Snaildom. You wonder if they've even seen a real snail. Worse, the trend's spreading through misunderstandings. Some colonial traders think the snails themselves are the product, not the slime. You hear rumors of shipments of live snails arriving in wooden boxes, causing panic when they escape. Invasion by French slugs. One paper cries despite them being perfectly English. Historians still argue whether the rise of snail export was driven by science novelty or simply imperial boredom. Some call it progress. Others call it absurd. One poet called it the slowest invasion in history. You kind of admire that one. You receive a letter from a cousin in New Zealand. We've taken to snail treatments here, she writes, but they're mixing them with sheep's milk and native ferns. I'm not sure the snails would approve. She includes a sketch of her current blend. You wince. The colonial adaptations are imaginative, if unhinged. One blend from Barbados includes papaya pulp and crushed clove. Stimulating, but makes you smell like punch, the reviewer writes. Another in Ceylon markets, a tiger balm snail fusion. You try to imagine the consistency and feel slightly ill. You start to worry about the snails themselves. Are they being treated well? Are the farmers being taught proper harvesting techniques? Or is it all becoming a chaotic slog through mucin-soaked capitalism? You write to Wickley. Ask if his suppliers have joined the export trade. He sends back a note. Only in small batches. We don't trust the tropical climate, or the customs officials, or frankly, anyone with the word Snail Baron in their business card. You exhale. At least some sanity remains, but not for long. At your next book club, which despite good intentions has still never featured an actual book, Lucinda brings a clipping from the Singapore Observer. They're infusing snail mucin with crushed pearl, she says, scandalized. Pearl for shimmer. Clara gasps. They're turning it into a highlighter. You all pause in horrified silence. What began as moisture-healing repair is now being weaponized for shine. Not glow, not softness, but glint, reflectivity, the skin equivalent of sequins. They've missed the point entirely, you mutter, shaking your head. Clara sighs. We've been colonized. Backwards. Even so, some adaptations are intriguing. One Australian woman is mixing mucin with eucalyptus for cooling effect. Another in Egypt combines it with date syrup. Sticky, she admits, but radiant. The global community is growing glistening and very, very inventive. You begin corresponding with some of these women, swapping recipes, techniques, cultural insights. A woman in Mumbai describes the mucin as grounding. Another in Mauritius says her grandmother thought the snails were sacred. They carry the earth with them, she writes. No wonder they heal. That line sticks with you. You write it on a slip of paper and tuck it into your journal. Because perhaps the exportation of slime isn't all bad. Perhaps this isn't just another imperialistic symptom, but a shared fascination. A slow-moving, glistening thread, stitching women across continents together, through something small and strange and true. And back in your London bedroom, with your lace curtains and your box of well-fed snails, you feel a kind of quiet kinship with women you've never met. You open a new jar. Press a cool layer onto your cheek. Somewhere in Sri Lanka, maybe someone's doing the same. And for a moment, the world is still. Peaceful. United by the softest of revolutions. You're adjusting your gloves in a drawing room, so refined it practically judges you on entry. Velvet drapes. Gilded frames. A chaise lounge upholstered in a floral fabric that whispers no children allowed. You're here for tea, technically. But you know what this gathering is really about. Class, beauty, and whose skin glows for what reasons. Lady Winthrop enters with the sweep of someone who hasn't tied her own shoelaces in 20 years. She greets you with a nod, eyes gliding over your face, pausing slightly too long on your cheekbones. You've caught the light so delicately, she says, voice honeyed but barbed. Is it the new cream, the cream, always the cream? A euphemism now for whatever mucin concoction one is secretly using and publicly pretending not to. You smile. Just something natural. She nods. Translation. You're one of those women. And she's right. You are. But what she doesn't say, what no one says in this room full of teacups and delicate tension, is what the glow means now. It's not just skincare. It's status. Snail mucin has become a class battleground. At first, it was the curiosity of curious women, garden experiments, home blends, a bit of slime, a dash of mint, a teaspoon of rebellion. But now it's a commodity graded, priced, and weaponized. You hear it in conversations. Mine's imported, of course. Only snails fed lavender leaves. We have our mucin filtered by handmaid. You manage not to roll your eyes. Barely. Historians still argue whether Victorian beauty standards evolved because of mucin's popularity, or if it simply gave women a new way to conform. But one thing is clear: the slime has stratified. The rich have serums in pearl-inlaid jars. The middle class settle for apothecary versions, functional if a bit vinegary. The poor, they go without or crush garden snails in secret, avoiding judgment from landladies and church gossip. A housemaid you know, Effie, once told you she used the trail of a snail that wandered across a windowsill, just dabbed it with a cotton scrap, she whispered. Felt like silk. You nodded, slipping her a rose-scented muslin pouch for next time. She beamed like she'd been handed diamonds. Meanwhile, society women host glow salons, not facials viewings. A woman applies her serum and then simply sits, letting guests examine the sheen. Observe the elasticity, one says. Note the lack of creasing, another murmurs. You feel like standing up and yelling, "It's slime." Not divine intervention, but you don't. Because you know what's really at play here. It's not just about looking good. It's about looking untouched. About erasing labor. Worry time. A luminous cheek says I don't work outdoors. A hydrated forehead says I can afford softness. A snail-slathered neck whispers I have leisure enough to smear mollusks on myself nightly. And while the skincare might be democratic, the context isn't. You begin noticing how mucin blends are discussed, as if they're wines. Oh, you're still using that London blend. So bracing. We've moved to the Wiltshire Amber variant, milder, more mature. One woman brings her own snail blend to dinner parties. I don't trust the hostess's mix, she says, dabbing her upper lip with a lace kerchief. You watch as the glow becomes a weapon, a way to distinguish, to separate, to exclude. It troubles you. You find yourself pulling back, returning to the rituals that felt personal, the homebrew blends, the silk cloths, the snails who know your hands. Henrietta and Beatrix are no longer just skincare partners. They're a quiet act of resistance. Because the truth is, beauty should feel earned, not displayed like a coat of arms. You begin talking more with the women who aren't invited to salons. Effie, Mrs. Horner, the baker's wife, a seamstress who uses mucin on her calloused hands. Softened them in 2 weeks, she says. I could almost cry. Their methods are clever. One uses rainwater to dilute the slime. Another mixes it with cold cream to stretch the jar longer. Their results radiant, real, alive. You start hosting your own meetings. Quiet ones, small gatherings, where women trade tips, not brands. They share trials, errors, recipes. No lectures, no judgments, just softness shared between hands. It becomes your new circle. And while the upper crust still glows with products named after Greek goddesses, you and your friends glow with something warmer, less icy, more human. Of course, the class lines don't vanish. One guest brings her jar in a velvet pouch. Another winces at the idea of using wild snails. But slowly the barrier thins. One night, Effie says, "You know the Duchess may have the best jars, but I bet my cheeks could still outshine hers in candlelight." Everyone laughs, and silently, you all agree she's probably right, because in the end, the glow isn't about price, it's about care, ritual, choosing softness in a hard-edged world, and no amount of monogrammed jars can fake that. You return home that evening and apply your blend rose mint and fresh mucin. You press it into your skin with practiced hands, not to impress, not to compare, just to feel it, just to be for a moment slow. The jar in your hand is smaller now, sleek, glassy minimalist, no ornate gold filigree, No embossed calligraphy spelling out Duchess due. Just a simple label. Snail serum number 4. A gift from a young woman you barely know. It's my own recipe, she'd said, eyes wide with pride. Modern take, stabilized. No smell. You sniff it. She's right. It smells like nothing. Just a whisper of aloe and a hint of clean. You apply it carefully like a secret you're not yet sure belongs to you. And as it absorbs, you find yourself wondering, is this what the future feels like? Because something has changed. The snail slime rituals you once practiced by candlelight are now packaged in sleek boxes, sold over the counter, discussed at department stores. No more secrecy. No more hidden linen cloths, tucked into drawers like illicit letters. Now snail mucin is simply normal, accepted, sanitized, marketable. There are posters on Oxford Street advertising hydromucin complex, glossy bottles with clinical fonts, reviews in the London Science Herald analyzing absorption rates. A chemist in Glasgow has written a paper on helix-derived peptides and their influence on collagen production. Historians still argue whether this wave of legitimacy elevated mucin or stripped it of its magic. Some say the science finally validated what women knew all along. Others mourn the loss of ritual, of texture, of slowness. You're not sure where you stand. Because yes, it's wonderful that mucin has moved beyond ridicule. That women no longer need to hide their jars in glove compartments or defend their choices with awkward smiles. But wasn't there something beautiful about the absurdity, the snails, the steam, the linen? You sit by your window watching the fog roll in. Your skin feels smooth, exceptionally so, but the moment feels quieter, less enchanted. You remember the first time you ever tried it, the hesitance, the wonder, the sense of rebellion as Henrietta slimed her way across your cheek. That moment was yours, not branded, not bottled, just yours. You leaf through your old journal. The pages are frayed, the ink faded, but there it is. Day 1. Skin soft, smells odd, intriguing. You smile. Next to it, a sketch. A tiny snail in a teacup. Above it, in uneven handwriting. Perhaps this is how revolution begins. And now, the revolution's over. It won. Mucin made it. From your garden box to global trend, from fringe curiosity to dermatological darling. There are clinics now, real ones, offering snail cell regeneration treatments. You visit one just once. A young woman in a white coat applies the serum with a sterile wand. No warmth, no conversation, just soft music and the distant hum of machines. It works technically. Your skin gleams, but it feels hollow, like eating cake without sugar. You miss Wilbur. You miss the feeling of slipping into your robe and whispering to Beatrix as she glided across your jawline. You miss the steam rising from your teacup as you pressed a warm cloth against your cheek, feeling like a woman making time in a world that offers so little. Clara agrees. She's back to making her own blend. I don't care if it's less stable, she says. It smells like mint, and it makes me happy. You join her. Together, you host a small gathering, not a book club, not quite a salon. Just a few women, a kettle, a pile of herbs, 3 small jars of carefully extracted mucin. Henrietta's great-granddaughter presumably contributes with quiet dignity. You share blends, swap stories. Someone reads a poem about the snails of yesteryear. Everyone laughs, but it's not nostalgic. It's celebratory. Because the future of skincare, it turns out, doesn't need to erase the past. It can blend it. There's room for both, for the sleek and the silly, the science and the softness, the clinic and the garden. You develop a new blend. Snail mucin, yes, but with a whisper of lavender and a single drop of lemon balm. You call it memory glow. Not for marketing, just for you. And every time you press it into your skin, you remember not the headlines or the Duchess or the debates, but the snails, the steam, the first time your cheek felt more like silk than paper. You look in the mirror now and see not perfection, but peace. The lines around your mouth curve upward. Your skin glows not because it's flawless, but because it's yours. And that's what snail mucin always gave you. Not just moisture, but choice. Slow, personal, gentle. A reminder that beauty doesn't need to shout, it can simply glide. You're back in your dressing room, but this time it's different. There's no ceremony tonight. No heated towels, no cucumbers sliced into perfect ovals. No guests, no gossip, no new trends to try or debunk. Just you, your reflection, and a single jar of mucin blend, sitting quietly at the corner of the vanity. You pick it up. It's a little dusty now, not from neglect, but from contentment. The same way a well-loved book settles into its place on the shelf. You've stopped chasing the next formulation, the next miracle that swears it's newer than the last miracle. You've arrived. The slime has done its job, not just on your skin, but on your life. It slowed things down, made you look closer, taught you how something humble, absurd, even could become sacred if given space, if respected. Your fingers glide over the surface of the serum. You apply it with the familiarity of habit, but with the gratitude of ritual. The texture is cool, silky, still a little strange, never not strange, but beautiful, for its strangeness. You lean back in your chair. The gas lamp flickers behind you. Outside, the streets hum with the sounds of the city, winding down carriages rattling over cobblestones, the distant bark of a dog, a church bell marking the hour. It's late, perfectly so. You remember the whispers, the warnings, the laughter. You remember the smell of rosewater and soil, the feeling of mucin pressed into your cheek with linen. The moment you realized this wasn't just skincare, it was autonomy. It wasn't about removing wrinkles. It was about removing permission. You didn't wait for science to approve it. You didn't ask for fashion's nod. You tried something strange and slow and slippery, and it worked, not because it transformed your face into porcelain, but because it made you feel present in your own skin again. That's the revolution no one put on a label. They told you beauty had to be earned through pain, that cold creams must sting, that powders must suffocate that to be admired you had to endure. But the snail said otherwise. It said go gently, go slow, heal as you glide. You look into the mirror now, and what you see isn't miraculous. It's real. Lines you've come to appreciate. Softness that didn't arrive in a jar, but in your choice to be kind to yourself. The journey shows, but so does the joy. Your cheeks glow not with highlighter or status or effort, but with the warmth of someone who knows herself. You once believed this was just a story about Victorian women and snail slime, but now it feels like something else. A quiet anthem, maybe. A whispered refusal to be brittle. A bedtime balm for women who've spent too long trying to disappear under powder. You stand, turn down the lamp, pull back the covers, slip between the sheets, with skin still dewy, still luminous. And as your head settles against the pillow, you think of all the women who came before, who never got to feel their skin this way, and all the women to come who won't need permission to try. You exhale slowly. The house settles. The snails sleep, and so do you. Now let it all go. Let the gas lamps dim behind your eyes, the clink of apothecary jars fade into the quiet of night. The garden is still now, no more rustling, no footsteps on damp soil, just a calm hush, where leaves once trembled, and snails wandered their soft, slow paths. Your breath slows, deepens like fog settling over the Thames. You've traveled far, not in miles, but in softness. Through steam and slime laughter and skepticism, you followed a trail not of haste or hunger, but of care. And now you're here. Imagine your skin soothed, not for anyone else's gaze, but for your own comfort. Imagine the linen cloth still warm from tea kettle steam, pressed gently against your cheek. It doesn't demand. It simply rests. Imagine Henrietta curled in her little box, dreamless and peaceful. The slow creatures teach us something, don't they? That not everything good must arrive quickly. That progress can glide instead of gallop. That beauty, true beauty, is not always loud. Let the air around you soften. Let the background blur. Let your mind curl in quiet and safe. There are no powders to apply, no appearances to maintain. Only the breath, the warmth, the weight of the blanket, and the dim trace of a strange little story, whispering you to sleep. You're glowing. You've always been. Good night.